You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host as always. And we're back this week for another suburb spotlight. It's North Perth. We haven't spoken about North Perth for 6 years. And you can imagine the conversation we're going to have today, the numbers changing quite a bit from March 2020. It was the middle of COVID we're having this conversation, so you can imagine the tone being quite different over that time. We had a rate rise last week, 0.25%. Will it affect Perth's market much? I don't think so. Obviously it has an arbitrary dampening effect on our affordability for those people who cap out with regards to their income, but for the most part we know that Perth people only run at about 4.5 times debt to income, where banks generally run their numbers at 6 to 1. So there's still fat in the system in Western Australia, and that's why I wanted to have a conversation about a suburb whose median house price has shot up over the last 6 years from sub 1 mils to mid 1 mils, and we'll have a conversation today with the number one agents in the area, just like we did 6 years ago. It's Nick Zounis, and this time joining him, Theo Kouroulis from what was Paragon and is now Edison.
Correct.
Boys, how you going?
Yeah, thanks very much for having us.
First conversation I wanted to have quickly, why the change? Paragon was such a recognised name based on your commitment to the suburb over pretty much my lifetime, if we're honest. Why the change?
Oh, look, it was a 25-year journey for Theo and I. Started together at Roy Western Central, morphed into Paragon Property, probably midway through that journey. And look, in the end, take the opportunity to merge with Edison. And for want of a better word, it's a succession plan for us. We love the sales side of things, and as you get a bit older, you want to divest the admin side and stick to the sales, and that's what we love doing, yeah.
And timing probably had a big thing to do with it as well. Our building had been sold by the owner of the building. The new owners were going to move in. We'd been speaking with Edison for nearly a year virtually about a possible merge, and I guess it all just came to a head, and the timing of it just fell into place, and there it was.
It's probably a good template for a lot of people in the real estate industry in a similar age bracket to you about how succession planning can happen, because you work so hard to build up a business that includes the administrative side, includes property management and all those things, that it's hard work to run those parts of the business.
It's tough.
Especially when you aren't ready to retire. You still love your gig, your day job. You just want to make it a bit simpler.
Yep. Yeah. Our competition love to say that we're retiring, but we're not. So it's always interesting. It's interesting because you hear clients who come and say to you and comment on the fact that they've been told this and that, but it's not at all the fact. So it's not an easy decision to make. It's a tough decision, especially when you've got what we consider quite a decent name in the area. We always prided ourselves doing the right thing by people and doing the best we can for people.
But it's another great example I've found, and I've seen many, especially many of the guests on this podcast, where they'd have private conversations with me I'm thinking about maybe leaving the franchise I'm in right now, but I'm really nervous that if I leave, no one will recognise me. And I have to continually respond by saying, guys, you are the brand. Your name, your face, your relationships is the brand. Whether the logo is red or blue or yellow, people do not care. As long as your mobile number didn't change, it's not going to change for you. And continually, people have been reinforced with that reality, and I'm sure it's been the same for you guys.
Yeah.
Good conversation starter, if anything.
Look, absolutely. In the end, back in the day, they'd ring the office, but most people ring mobiles now.
And we went through that same change when we were part of the Roy Western group back in the early days, and they transitioned from Roy Western to Harcourts. We had to make a decision at that time, and it was a scary thought, just as much as it was now, doing what we had to do.
But let's talk about what you love, and I'm a fan as well, given I'm building in the suburb.
You are.
Yeah.
North Perth is, in my opinion, one of the best places in Western Australia to live. It's got everything, and also not being as assuming as many other suburbs in Perth that have similar amenities. It's an everyman suburb, I think, but also still one that's fairly aspirational. It benefits from so much of the best things about Perth City, and I wanted to refresh people's memories about that, whilst also having a conversation with you guys about the journey that your suburb has been on since we were talking about it 6 years ago, Nick, to where we are now, a really frothy time in the market. How well has North Perth been represented in that growth story? 6 years ago, the last question I asked you was, what was the median house price at the time? Do you remember your response?
Yeah, I think it was 830 we were talking at that time. Now we're at 1.6.
Doubled in 6 years.
Doubled in 6 years. The last time we talked, COVID had just broken out. a lot of uncertainty. I think the week after we talked, we closed down for 5 or 6 weeks, and Theo and I are looking at each other in the office.
Retirement planning.
We were actually not meant to be in the office, but we snuck in and
many of us, yeah.
and did our stuff, and it was very uncertain times. But weirdly, very Perth, we came out of it very quickly, and as soon as those expats started bouncing back into Perth, the prices started to move, and it's been an upward spiral ever since.
What's the journey been like over those 6 years? Remind us about what it was like being a real estate agent in North Perth back in 2020, post-COVID lockdown. What was the dynamic like in terms of how much work you had to do to get people in the door, get a contract, get multiple offers, and then I guess we'll then juxtapose that against what life's like at the moment?
At that point, I think, if I recall, you have a home open and quite honestly it was crickets. There was no one around. Very few people would come and they'd be very picky, very choosy. A lot of the time the properties would stay on the market for 3, 4, 5 weeks. And then slowly as COVID ended and we became more popular as a city, I think a lot of people from outside looked at Perth and went, hang on, this is not a bad place to be after all, considering the way it was handled.
To a tune of 10,000 people a year since then.
Yeah, exactly. And so, they've all got to live somewhere. And look, North Perth is such a great community-orientated location, close to virtually anything you need. And it is, as I said, the community part of it's a big deal. You're walking down, people talk to each other. There's not many places in suburbs where people actually talk to each other. There's some places you go and sell in other suburbs when you talk to people and ask them about their neighbours and they've never met them, never spoken to them.
So who were your buyers back then, boys?
I don't think the buyer profiles changed that much. The only thing I'd add is there's probably more East Coast people have come to Perth over the last 5 years, but the buyer profiles are still the same. They're young professionals, downsizers.
And now we're getting a few families as well.
Yeah, lots of families. The profile's still the same.
Has the mix of people in the suburbs started to evolve over the time as the median house price has changed? Is it becoming less accessible?
I think so.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah. Look, in the end, when we first started, there was a heavy ethnic population.
Well, a lot of wogs.
Yeah, a lot of wogs like us.
A lot of nonners still holding on.
Their families had been here for 100 years. And then obviously children, grandchildren sell out the family home, or one of them buys it out from everyone else. Yeah. That's still going on today, but to a lesser extent. But yeah, they were the predominant population through the area. That is now changing a little bit.
I've noticed as I walk the streets on a daily basis, it's a lot of late 30s, early 40s couples with their kids who are just getting into primary school. It might probably be their second home, or if they stretched or got help from their parents, maybe it was their first home. They've bought a cottage and done it up. There's a lot of people stretching to get into North Perth.
Yeah, that's very true. And we see it a lot, especially we go and have our coffee in the morning at Angove Street, as you probably know. Most people in the area do see us there. And we do notice a lot of young couples who bought homes 5, 6 years ago. And now all of a sudden there's a pram. And in that pram is one child. And then a year later there's a second child. And I tell you what, I must admit, I get a bit of goosebumpy when I talk about it. It's actually a great feeling. Because you look at it and you think, you know what, we help these people get into a great suburb. Yeah. And not only that, but now you can see their family growing and their family becomes part of the community and then end up at North Perth Primary or Kaela, and away it goes.
So I'm posting a bit of a revitalisation for that community, because I imagine like every suburb, I think of a place like Canning Vale right now. 30 years ago, it was young families in a new land estate. And it's all now 50 and 60-year-olds where the kids have moved out and there's big, massive homes, obviously very different to North Perth's setup. But the point I'm making is they're really now in a space where the schools aren't that busy and it's just really all people who don't have downsizer options trying to find somewhere else to move. I think about North Perth. There would have had to have been a time in your career where it was similar, where all the kids had moved out, it was a bit stale, no one's renovating, no one's sprucing it up. I'd like to think there's nearly a new guard coming through North Perth, especially with Alma Square coming up. It's going to revitalise Fitzgerald Street. There's some new restaurants. I think all of that's going to create, if it's not already, a younger vibe of aspirational Gen Z, Gen Xers.
It definitely has happened. And the way I guess you can prove that or substantiate that is that if you look along the main roads of North Perth,
which are
Scarborough Beach Road, Fitzgerald Street, Charles Street, there's a lot of childcare centres being built. I think we've counted the last time, there might be 8 or 9 childcare centres being built in the last 5, 6, 7 years. They don't build unless they've got the data to show that
the population
demand is going to be there. So that definitely reflects young families coming into the area and boosting the area.
One of the great things also that's happening now, and if you want to use Canning Vale as an example, you look at that, it's your typical economic cycle. The older generation move out, they go to something smaller, the younger generation come in because they need the bigger homes for a growing family. The beauty about North Perth is that as the older generation gets to the point where they don't need a house of that size, because of certain developments that are going on, it doesn't actually mean they've got to move out of the suburb. They can actually downsize of a house and buy something smaller, which is more manageable, lock and leave, but still be part of the community. So all of a sudden you're seeing, instead of all the older generation moving out, the younger generation coming in, it becomes a little bit more of a mix, which is actually quite a nice thing.
There is quite a varied typology in North Perth, which is what you're alluding to. There are a number of properties in the suburb that are R40 and have been developed as such. R30 and have been split into two, for example. Townhouses, there are enough apartments and more coming along as well to facilitate not only the cheaper first home buyer option, but also just the lower maintenance downsizer option, as you're speaking to. And then, as you said, the core stock is still that 400 to 500 square metre property with a 3x1. Maybe it's been renovated or extended that a young family can live in as well.
Correct.
What's going on now when we think about the dynamic? I mentioned before it was cricket 6 years ago. It was, you really had to be a skillful real estate agent, not to get a listing, but to convert that into a contract. I guess it's the other way around now, where it's hard to get a listing because there's not many of them around. But when you do, they just sell themselves in a way, and it's your job to maximise that outcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the skill now is getting the listing. It always has been getting the listing. The days on market are probably only 7 to 9 days at the moment. There's 30, 40, 50, in some cases 100 groups of people coming through homes. So it's managing that home open scenario. And I think the main thing is to give everyone an equal opportunity to buy that property.
How can you do that when there's 100 people hitting up your phone on a Saturday at 8 p.m?
The whole process is to try and maximise that return for your seller. At the same time, you've got to be transparent with people. Now, that does not mean that you start talking about what one person's offered and another person's, because I think that's quite unethical. It's all about just being transparent about the process is really important. A lot of the time we use what we call the from price, where we put something on the market, we'll put a from price. So it gives people a guide of where it's to start from. And that's important because it is a really tough time for buyers at the moment. And the secret is to keep a buyer confident or comfortable that they're walking into a property that, oh yes, I have got a chance of buying this.
They're not wasting their time.
There is a lot to see, but not a lot of time. So they don't want to sit there, make offers on properties, wait 2 or 3 weeks to actually get a result or get an answer. And a lot of the time, most of them aren't going to buy it. They want to be able to move on or move in.
So what's the dynamic there? You do a home open at 10:45 on a Saturday.
Yep.
You're probably doing 2 or 3 before you're flushing a lot of the market out and justifying to your seller that you've done your job. How do you then go about identifying where your number one offer is going to be? And the reason I'm asking this is because there would be a lot of people listening from a buyer's side right now who just love to hear, what am I up for? And then they can build their own strategy around that.
Exactly.
We've always worked a little bit differently. Like, we'll use what we call an intention form. So people will fill out that form. It's an intention to make an offer.
So they just self-identify?
Yeah, they basically are telling us what their thoughts are. We always say to them, you've got to put your absolute best foot forward, because even though we do ring everybody and have a conversation, we want to know who the top 3 are. And then we'll give them a call towards the end of that period. And it all happens within a 5-day period. So we'll give them a call and basically ask them if that is their absolute best offer. Because some people think it's their best offer, but it's actually not.
They also want you to think it's their best offer,
that's right,
because they think they probably don't want to overspend.
That's right. But there is a little bit of that fear of missing out. And that's a natural thought that most people will have.
In this market?
Yeah, in this market, absolutely. So you give everybody an opportunity to up their offer at what they believe is the absolute best offer, and you coach them as far as you can ethically.
All right, so let's say you get 30 intents to offer. What next?
We would go back to them all and say and we've had a scenario where we've had 40. So we've rang all of them and said, look, the bottom probably 25, 30, you sit there and go, look, unless you're significantly higher,
this is it.
This is it. You probably should move on. So they always have the opportunity. But then we start dealing on probably 2 or 3 different stages until we get to that last 2 or 3. Obviously, the point is to give everyone an equal opportunity and not feel as if they've been shunted by another real estate agent.
Let's be transparent about this as much as we can. Does the squeaky wheel get the oil? Insofar as if I put my offer in at 1.45 and then I'm calling you every 2 hours like a lovable pest, not pissing you off, but just reminding you I'm still here, do I get maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to get that property?
We'll ring the guy who's made the highest offer, and we'll also ring the person who's made the lower offer and give them all an equal opportunity. Let's make no mistake about it. Our job as real estate agents is to get the most we can for our seller.
That's your job.
If anyone thinks that our job is to actually help the buyer pay less, that is totally wrong. I can't make that more clear. We're employed by the seller to get as much as we possibly can. We're helping a buyer buy a property by asking them the question, is that your absolute best offer? Now, the reason we do that is because the number one person who's offered the most then gets the equal opportunity to be able to up their offer or not.
So that's how they do.
If they do that, then we keep asking to a point where they go, we're at that point. If we don't buy it...
So it's nearly a silent auction in a way. In this market, you're continually giving more and more opportunity for people to help you extract the best price out of the market. And at what point do you think it stops? At what point do you then go in this process, we're not asking anymore, we feel like we've identified the best price? How do you know that?
As soon as the buyer says that we're out at that point.
You're down to the last 2 or 3, essentially?
We're out at that point.
We always maintain, this is because a lot of these people are first home buyers to a degree, and our advice to them is to, look, just pay what you're absolutely comfortable with. Do not overextend yourself if you don't have to.
So that leads me to a question there is, do you have many at the moment who are getting a bit overexcited, putting the highest offer in and then falling over on finance? Is it happening at all?
No, not a lot.
I think we've had probably in the last 12 months maybe one fall over on finance.
Yeah, so people are very prepared.
And look, the other thing is that sometimes not always the highest offer is the one that accepted.
That was going to be my next question.
Because they are.
What's it look like in the non-financial term space right now? What can I do as a buyer to be there or thereabouts in the price space, but maximise my non-price competitiveness?
There's a lot of, and depending on the property, but there's the normal North Perth property gets a building inspection and a pest inspection. Some buyers are that confident about their finance that they're going cash.
Some or a lot?
Not a lot.
Not a lot,
no.
some.
Okay.
It's a risky move because obviously you lose your job, you don't get your finance. Some are going cash with the idea of it'll propel them even if they're the second offer.
Does it?
It does a little bit, yeah. In the seller's mind, if it's only 5 or 10 grand difference and it's a cash 45-day offer as opposed to a $1 million finance, it plays on the seller's mind.
What would be the median average non-financial term that you would suggest is being accepted right now in North Perth? How many days finance, if it is? How many days settlement?
It's 21
or 28.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be much earlier than that to make a difference?
No.
A lot of the times it's virtually impossible to get finance prior to, unless you're pre-approved and everything's. But in saying that, it all depends on what you do for work as well, because we've seen financial institutions who, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, you tend to get that, they actually push you through.
You do get prioritised.
You do, which is unfair for those who aren't in those.
Capitalism.
The
banks manage those rules.
Yeah, and it makes it hard. So just to go back on buyers, and we're pushing buyers to pay as much as possible because that's what our job is. One thing I guess I want to highlight with that, we've never had, when people don't pay a certain price and they miss out, they'll never really know exactly how much they missed out by. But the ones who do pay that extra and do go beyond and actually do buy the property, they never actually think about the fact that they paid that extra once they've moved in and they're loving their home and they're enjoying their lifestyle. But if they missed out on it, they will always talk about the one they missed out on.
There's a lot of regret. And that's the Mark Twain quote. You rarely regret the things you did, but
Correct.
you will the things you didn't.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it's interesting, actually, after they've bought it and they've been looking for, in some instances, 12, 18 months, the relief of actually having bought.
Yeah, they stop worrying about the extra 20 grand.
And we do say to people, if you've got an extra 5 or an extra 10, now's the time.
When we think about that fear of missing out and the open-ended framework of a from offer, let's say you're putting a property on the market from 1.3. It's your best guess of where the market at least should be. Can you give us some transparency about where, at the moment, you're being surprised it's ending up right now in February 26?
There's a lot of examples of that. It happens a lot.
Please.
Albert Street.
Look, on a smaller scale, we had an apartment at 10 Albert Street that we put on from $595, expecting to get in the early to mid-6s. That ended up selling for 700,000. Probably had 50 odd groups.
Were
through.
you surprised by that?
I was a little bit surprised.
Because you otherwise probably would have put from
Well, that's
675
exactly
or
right.
something.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah. The seller, who wasn't originally a Perth guy, live in the East Coast now and aren't coming back, said, look, if you can get me anywhere above 635, 640, I'm over the moon. He'd owned it off the plan. He bought that in 2012. And as you probably aware, the apartment market was very static for most of that period.
Well, at least a decade.
At least a decade. And it started to move in the last 2-3 years, which prompted him to sell. So
there's another more recent one, which I can't really tell you the address, but for those who are out there who've been there will know, because we had a lot of people through it. It was from 1195, sold for over 1.4. Now,
You were surprised, obviously.
A lot of the times you are.
Yeah.
A lot of the times you are, because when you go in, you look at the statistics, you look at what things are selling for, where it should be or where you think it might be, and you think it's going to be a little bit more than what you appraise it for, but the market gets hold of it and runs with it. And you've got no control over that. You really don't have much control in respect to how far it will take.
Yeah.
And the
it
classic,
takes one person, right?
Yeah, and the classic question that people always ask is, oh, look, I know you're asking from this price. What are the seller's expectation? And the reality of that is the seller's expectation is irrelevant in this market because your competition is every other buyer walking through the home.
Yeah, you're not really,
and
it's
I don't
not
know,
you versus the seller, it's you versus the rest of the
and
buyers.
we don't know what those other buyers are going to offer at the end of the day or where they're going to end. All we know is our job is to get as much as we can for our seller and try and help a buyer get into a property.
We know North Perth went up 15% last year. You've got a great example for us on just a 12-month change up recently in North Perth, don't you?
Yeah, 107 Alma Road. That went on the market, it would have been 18 months ago now, I would think. And originally when it sold, about 18 months ago, it was sold for 1.785. 18 months later, the people were transferred back to the east, so they had to move on, and they were hoping to get their money back and maybe their stamp duty. It ended up going for nearly 2.1 million.
No change to the property.
Zero change to the property.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of
the
that
market.
growth in that time.
The market.
yeah.
So it's not just limited to that sub 850 space with a 5% deposit scheme right now. It's really rippling up into that aspirational middle tier suburbs as well.
Absolutely.
Are you surprised that people are able to afford this money?
A lot of the times we do sit there and go, where are they getting the money from?
Is it there are a lot of parents rocking up? They're probably guarantors.
Yeah, but I don't know if the guarantor thing makes a big difference with the banks these days. I think they still look at the individual and what they...
Well, from an income perspective, the income needs to stack up. The guarantee isn't from an income side. But I have to say it is surprising for a lot of people, obviously, unless they're already in the market in the last few years and using equity from their first home, that it is not easy to gather $200,000-$400,000 as a 35-year-old.
Well, one thing we can tell you is that, because we usually see it, the average loan that most people are getting is $1 million plus. Now, that's a lot of money.
The parents are involved in it's either in giving them part of the deposit or they might put a couple of $100,000 of their savings in against the loan to help out.
Well, to be frank, that's been the reality in Sydney for the last 10 years plus, and it was only going to be a matter of time before that was the reality for us in Perth.
That's new for us, yeah.
Last time we spoke, Nick, you were a big fan of Grosvenor as one of the better spots in North Perth as a suburb to be aspiring to be in. Obviously, it's interfaced with Hyde Park and it also being close to the local primary schools and the coffee strip there. Is it still where you'd say your number one pick would be if you could, with any money, buy in North Perth? Or have you evolved your thoughts over the time?
Look, there's a lot of beautiful character homes through Chelmsford, Grosvenor, Raglan, as there are in most, and I think I said the same thing last time, as you get further out or away from the city through North Perth, the homes are a little bit younger.
It's your dress circle there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely. Anywhere in and around the North Perth Plaza Shopping Centre, I think the main theme that we've been looking at over the last 10 years is walkability. People want to be able to lock their car up, walk to North Perth Coles, for example, walk to Angove Street, walk to the Rosemount.
It seems to be a post-COVID phenomenon that people really want to get back to that village life. And I think that's why North Perth has doubled in the space of 6 years, because it's one of the best examples of a village life.
It really is.
And not have to use your car. Even to go to work, if you work in the city, you can walk in, bus in, ride in, plenty of options.
And we're getting people as well who are turning around and saying, yes, I get it. If it's not near the Angove Street, I wouldn't mind somewhere near the Kyla Markets. which are on every Saturday morning.
Big community there as well.
Again, it's a big community. Everyone's working Monday to Friday. Saturday, they've got the markets. It's a really good place for kids to go and run around, have a bit of fun. People go buy their fruit and veggies and meat and fish.
Yeah, schools are big too.
It's a big deal.
Are you seeing a lot of construction? Are there many people building, knocking down, renovating? A lot of these houses are getting to their 100-year.
I think people are not, because prices are going through the roof. Changing over is expensive. You've got to pay an agent to sell your house. You've got to pay stamp duty. So a lot of people are spending 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 upgrading their homes as they get older instead of maybe downsizing or moving to an apartment. They'll just stay in their homes.
We've had that conversation about what you said, developing and things that are happening. And not that it's not a bad thing, because that's life. But we have said that I think the town of Vincent probably needs to have a look at some of these houses that they're allowing to be knocked over, because there is a lot of character homes that are still quite salvageable that are actually being demolished.
So there's a bit of that happening.
Yeah, there is. And look, the thing I guess that we look at, and you've got to remember, we've been here for 35 and 40 years of doing this work in the area, so we've seen virtually every house in the area. But it's starting to change the look of North Perth.
How so?
Because the character homes, a lot of the bigger blocks with the character homes are going.
What are they being replaced with?
Modern homes.
Yeah, but nothing too spectacular.
Yeah.
It looks great and all that sort of stuff, but it's not the character of the suburb. And that's the only thing I think they need to be careful of, not to actually lose the essence and the character of what North Perth is about.
I've noticed, as Nick was saying, there's quite a lot of renovation happening, rear extensions, two-storey rear extensions, where they are trying to keep the character of the front cottage.
Yep.
But I also have noticed too, for every one of those, there is someone knocking down an R40 block and putting 2 or 3 side-by-side terrace-style properties as well. And I guess in and of itself, that's not a problem, as long as you can try and keep to the character of the area.
And that's exactly right.
That's the point, because a lot of the developers, they'll develop to a budget. And
whatever's fresh last year, this year.
And when you look back, we're at 2026 now. If you look forward and go to 2046, what's that house going to look like compared to the rest of the suburb? Because they age very quickly, these newer homes. And that's the beauty of the character home.
And there is some streets where you drive along and it's beautiful character homes, and then this is, where'd this come from? Like it's so out of place. And you think, oh, okay, that's interesting. But you know that, like Nick was saying, in 10 or 15 years, you're going to look at that and go, geez, what were they thinking then? But the character homes are forever.
That's right.
The character homes.
It's interesting. I like Alma Square development.
Well, that's been so heavily scrutinised to make sure it does fit in with the character.
When I say I like it, developers, again, everything's to the dollar. They buy it as a 6-storey height limit, try to push it to, 16 or 17 and end up with 9. It's a big scale development, but it'd be nice. I'm a firm believer in development or higher rise development, 3, 4, 5 levels maybe, along main roads. They can take advantage of public transport and the like and keep the fabric of the suburb intact.
I think Charles and Fitzgerald will continue to evolve over time to facilitate that, as it has been right now. You've got a couple of developments on Fitzgerald doing that right now.
Yep.
Let's quickly provide an update to everyone on what you're going to get for your money. 1-bedroom apartment or unit, North Perth. Throw a dart at the wall.
The basic
What is the evidence?
1960s flat is probably 400,000.
Yeah.
Somewhere there, the 40-odd square metres, 45 square metres.
Depending on the complex.
Yeah, and then the newer ones are 600,000-700,000.
There's your example there.
700,000.
And then once you start getting into the 2-bedders, it could go up to 800.
What's it cost me now for an original 3x1 on an original block?
That is just original. You're probably going to be at 1.6.
Yeah.
So there's your median.
That's right there. That's walking in and going, what do I have to spend to get it right?
Are you getting anything under 2 these days for a done-up?
A 3x2 with a couple of parking in a decent location is over 2.
Okay.
No question.
How expensive can it get in North Perth now? Have you got any examples, even if they haven't sold, where you go, I could put that down to the nearest couple $100,000? Are there properties now that are getting into the 3s, 4s,
Yeah,
5?
absolutely.
I know the penthouses in Alma Square are going for the 4s, but what else?
Where we sold Blake Street.
12 Blake Street, we sold it for 3.14.
Beautiful home. Nice big block.
Is it the best home in North Perth, or do you think it would be?
It's not the best.
No.
It's one of the great homes.
It's up there.
Look, there's homes in North Perth that I think if they came for sale, they would definitely have a 4 in front of them.
Yeah.
And I would pinch hit, there's a couple of absolute beauties that may have a 5 in front of them.
But they just won't come to market.
They're not. Yeah, they've been held for 20, 30 years. And
The generational.
Yeah.
It's exciting that there is such a scope of opportunity in North Perth. Your one bed is still in your 400s all the way up to your aspirational 4 or 5 mils. It's a suburb for everyone, I think, as long as you want to be a part of the community.
I think you can be confident that when you're buying in a suburb like North Perth, as long as you're prepared to stay and enjoy it, you're going to have growth.
Yeah, let's talk about that growth.
You're going to have growth.
Let's say I had you back in a year's time. Medians, what do you think?
1.8.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a 10% rise through this year.
You'd like to think that North Perth is one of those suburbs that is definitely being recognised and is still not out of touch when you compare it to a lot of the western suburbs prices.
It's quite interesting. I think when we first started in real estate, North Perth was probably ahead of Mount Hawthorn, for example, but Mount Hawthorn has slowly taken over the last probably 20 odd years. But North Perth is now catching up quickly.
Why do you think a suburb closer to the city has had a period where it would have been lower in price than a suburb further out? Shouldn't Mount Hawthorn be the bridesmaid suburb?
Yeah, but Mount Hawthorn, they've invested a lot more money in. One of the unfortunate things in North Perth is the plaza.
Yeah.
That's a real issue.
I don't see that changing given the ownership structure.
Yeah, that's the problem that was created originally by council.
The ownership structure has changed a little bit because Coles in there has just been sold, and I'm pretty sure the owners of that own several other properties in the complex. So hopefully they'll see some change and the upgrade will happen over the next 5 to 10 years.
It probably means a multi-storey apartment building in the next 15 years.
Yeah, look,
but that's not a bad thing.
There's a lot of wasted space there.
It is.
It's a great location. I think it's about 10,000 odd square metre block, 4 street frontages, so it's right for the picking, and hopefully they do a great job with it, and that's pretty much what is the only thing lacking in North Perth.
Putting their money where their mouth.
Yeah, but I think that's probably because of the structure.
Yeah.
That's a long way off.
Boys, thanks so much for your time today. It's been great to have an update on what is really one of my favourite suburbs in the city, and it's great to hear about the dynamics and provide some honest context for those looking to get into the suburb itself, or even just generally understanding what those dynamics are. Have a really lovely rest of the year, and good luck with your sales this weekend.
Thanks for having us, Trent. We look forward. Seeing him up at on the strip.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!